to support you with any questions that you may have. So Dr. Williams, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate you, and I just value your work in this space. To be here weekly with these students, and Deb, you too. Like, you just rock. So I thank you so much. I know we're closing out our series this evening, but I just want to, publicly thank you all for this opportunity. It has led to a lot of courageous conversations in my email, from administrators to students that may not feel comfortable in the space talking about it, but it is a big dialogue outside of, outside of this space after they watch it. So both of you all, you rock. And I see that in the chat, you rock. So good job to you all. And I appreciate the opportunity. So we're gonna close out tonight with a bang. We're gonna close out talking about activism. We're gonna talk about allyship. We're gonna talk about ways to really incorporate looking at racism in STEM and taking it to the next level. So as you all know, I'm gonna, without further ado, I introduced myself, but I brought two dynamic students with me that are both in the graduate program. Shyrisse used to be with us here at Columbus State University, but as she just mentioned, she's at the University of Florida. And then we have, let me see, I'm pulling all names here. I wanna go back to the front so you can see it. Destiny here with us, and she's at the University, or Howard University. And we're so excited to have both of them here. If they could just give a quick introduction to themselves, they're going to talk more in detail in just a little bit. Shyrisse or Destiny, whichever one. Both come off mute.
All right, so I'm Shyrisse. As I mentioned, I'm at the University of Florida. I will be studying biomedical science, concentrating in immunology. My goal is to continue to do research in autoimmunity. So that's why I chose to study type 1 diabetes, because it's an autoimmune form of diabetes.
Excellent. And Destiny.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Destiny Lawler. I'm entering my third year as a PhD student in pharmacology at Howard University. And I also am interested something similar to Shyrisse. And I'm also interested in autoimmune disease, but currently I'm doing research with COVID and vaccines. So yeah, just stay tuned. Thank you.
Stay tuned. I love it. So we have two bright young women that are going to talk about advocacy as students and just different ways to go forth in that space. We're going to navigate through it. I want to respect your time here tonight. As you all know, this is the closeout. The first part was the foundation of understanding what racism is and how it impacts us in STEM. If you all haven't had an opportunity to go back to those sessions, I definitely encourage you to do so that you can understand the whole totality of this experience as we close out. And next we talked about, the collegiate experience and listening to our faculty, staff, and even community leaders that were courageous enough to talk about the different aspects of diversity in STEM and how it impacts in terms of racism. And then lastly, tonight, we're coming home, we're bringing it home with a bang, talking about allyship. And what does that look like? What does it look like within STEM? How does it look like, how does it impact us in education? How does it impact us every day as we navigate this space? So just a quick check-in. I really want some good interaction. We're closing out tonight. So please, you can unmute yourself, or you can just put it in the chat and I'll make sure I pull that up and I'll look at that. So the first question is, just checking in, seeing what we understand about this topic. I just kind of want to do a quick questioning. Who knows about advocacy and what are some examples within the space? And ladies, if you could help me monitor the chat, that would be awesome. Or you can unmute yourself. Any of these aspects. We will go over all of them, but I'm just curious to see, does anybody know what it means to be an advocate or an ally in different spaces? I'll give one more second for a taker. Support, excellent, Nigel, absolutely.
I think Sarah has her hand raised.
Oh, excellent. Go ahead. If you, we're not able to see your hand raised until, so please, you can reply.
Okay, so I'm not like 100% sure, but when I think of that word, I think of someone who stands out, that makes a difference, and impacts others to also make the same actions or stand up, help others stand up as well.
Excellent. You said you didn't know, but you answered it. That's
Oh,
all
okay.
of those things, and we'll talk about that. Anyone else? You guys see any other hands raised? Okay, so we're going to move into it. So let's talk about it in terms of what an ally is and what advocacy is, because those two terms are interchangeable in this space. So this is a person who joins with another for a common purpose. So whether it's to support someone in need, whether it's to stand up for justice in an area, whether it's to just be a listening ear to someone who is discouraged, it's being able to navigate that space and push forward and safely, support different minorities in the space. So of course we're talking about racism in this particular aspect, but if there's racist practices, if there's rude practices, if there's insensitive practices that are going on, an ally will, make sure that they're advocating for that space. So looking at ways to help with different patterns of wrongdoing, or help at allowing them to communicate effectively. So what does an advocate look like? So these are some images that you'll see of different advocates in different spaces. So you have racial justice, Hispanic awareness and education, providing opportunities for women in sports, LGBTQ initiatives, trans space support. All of these are allies and support systems in our world today, right? But when we look directly within STEM, it is so important for us to understand the foundation and the legs that we stand on, the shoulders that we stand on. And that's Louis Stokes, right? So when you look at his story, we were fortunate a few years ago to have one of his fellow good friends from here in Columbus, Georgia, come and speak to us, who knew him personally and could talk about his mission and his plight to advocate for justice, to advocate for minority students to have access in the STEM field. And it was such a treat because you could see someone that was so selfless, someone that was so mindful to say, you know what, I want to make sure that I'm not the only person at the table. I want to make sure I'm not advocating for only people that look and talk like me or come from the same environment. So if you don't know, you should know if you're a part of the program, but if you don't know, take the time to really look up, his legacy. He's no longer with us, but his legacy still lives on through each of us. The work that we're doing today, excellent. Deb is always on the chat and just with courageous links and outstanding links, but definitely check that link out, because this is someone that is an advocate. So if you're wondering, what does that look like in the STEM space? This is it. This is courageous. This is optimistic. This is forward thinking. This is expanding outside of himself to think about others. So when we look at advocates and advocacy work, are they separable? Are they separate or interchangeable? We'll talk a little bit more about that. So when we look at advocacy work, right, we want to talk about how to defend or promote a cause, a broad concept that goes beyond changing or shaping legislation, and really looking at professionals and promoting positive social change. So in different spaces where you're in the classroom by yourself, or you're trying to work on a project that is focused on a minority group, being able to be that courageous change to move forward. You see, there was a couple participants ago, they sent me an email saying, I think of an advocate, I think of the young woman that came up with the Moderna. It really is, she's a minority woman in the STEM space that's advocating for that, for justice, for looking at social justice in terms of COVID and how to navigate, and even communicating to minorities, different areas, minority groups and abroad, that it's okay to take, that particular vaccine, and that it was originated from a woman of color. So it may not look like you're marching in the street or you're having your sign or your protest. It may not look like that. It may look like you're coming up with a cure or an opportunity to save someone's life in a different arena. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward. So when you look at activism, you also want to see it in the lines of, hold on one second, I'll pull this to the side, you know, where it campaigns. So activism is beyond, you know, advocacy work where it campaigns for a cause, but this is where you actually go out for social change in regards to political aspects. So, and you may go to your legislator, you may go to the local, your local legislators in terms of policy and procedure. You may go to your president, you may go to your dean, you may go to the person that may be over your university system to talk about different advocacies. So one thing that we mentioned earlier with Lewis Stokes was creating opportunities to look at different funding. So if there's funding that is missing in different spaces, how can you advocate for that? How can you mobilize, you know, running for political office? If I know that some of that is outside of the STEM world, but it can be interchangeable where you're advocating for students in the STEM space, where you're advocating for other faculty in the STEM space. And really to kind of pull those, tie those two in is to be an activist is to speak, and to be an advocate is to listen. So there's different aspects. Some of us on this line, and from speaking to people throughout this series, they don't necessarily feel comfortable with the activist role of coming forth and speaking and just navigating, you know, being the one that up front. But they will be the one that listens, right? They will be the one that is there for you to navigate, to understand where you are. They will be the one that takes the time to hear at different points, whether it's in the beginning of your STEM journey, whether it's during your STEM journey, you're trying to figure it out, but they will be the one that's there to listen. So just to know the difference between the two is one is more vocal, one is more in the forefront, and one is more of a listening ear, but both, you know, we cannot move forward unless we have both. So just knowing your space as we navigate. We understand that racism exists. We understand that it's in the classroom at different avenues, but are you going to be the one, the change agent that looks at it as I'm going to speak out loud against this, or am I going to listen to my colleagues and my friends that need me and need my support? Okay, so there are, again, when you break these two down, and I put this link here, and I'll send this PowerPoint to Deb, but it really talks about the different journeys of how to become an activist and how to, this is an assessment to look out. So when you're an advocate, you're speaking, you know, against political issues, you're looking at different injustices within the system, but then it's just the listening ear. So if you're trying to figure out on a deeper level how to assess that, there's a blog there, and within that blog, it talks about the different journeys that students, professionals, and leaders have taken along the way. But then also it talks about, it allows you to take an assessment of your identity to see how that ties into that as well. So just continuing to advocate for that space, and then you also get this PowerPoint so you can see it for yourself. So when you think of advocacy versus activism, where do you see yourself in this space? Let me hear some of your voices. Where do you see yourself in this? Even our panelists definitely chime in too. Where do you see yourself in this space? Are you more of an advocate? Are you more of an activism type worker? Where are you in the STEM space in terms of just advocating or being an ally?
Feel free to raise your hands if you like. It's okay to be bold. We want to hear you.
This is a part of it.
There's no right or wrong answers here, so we want to hear your feedback. So please feel free to raise your hands.
All right.
Hey, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I feel like they are not inseparable.
Okay, talk to me about that.
Hold on, what'd you say?
I said, go ahead and talk to us about that.
Oh, I feel like that because I feel like a follower leader situation. So I feel like, yes, the leader is good, but the leader also needs the follower. And yes, the follower is good, but the follower also needs the leader. And it's like this symmetrical relationship that needs to happen. like the activists can only go so far without the advocacy, and then the advocacy can only go so far without the activists, in my opinion.
Right. And that's an excellent assessment. You know, it's not one or the other. You need both, but also in that space, both are leaders, right? We want to reiterate that both are leaders in their own way. So people that feel more comfortable in navigating in open form and communicating in that way, they're there for that. But then those that are needing to be the listening ear to pass the information on or to give information to key people are there as well. So that's an excellent assessment, Nigel. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I mean, yeah, just to add to that, yeah, I agree, because, well, for one, everybody has a duty and responsibility in their role, and then they also have to star in that role.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
Okay, you have 3 hands raised.
Yeah, come on in.
Okay.
Call them out, Destiny. Let us know who they are.
Y'all, if I say y'all names wrong, I'm from Alabama, sorry. Please don't hurt me. So I see Matita, Victoria, and Anik. I'm sorry if I say them wrong.
Well, we'll do it in that order. Thank you, Destiny.
No problem.
Okay, this is Matita.
Hey.
So I would say that I'm more of an activist. So I run a nonprofit, and I started the nonprofit in response to the growing issues of maternal and infant mortality in the Gambia, which is where I was born and raised.
Wow.
And as a result of that, I organized a march. So I would say I definitely fall more so on the activist side, but I do think that the two terms, advocacy and activism, are in many ways interchangeable, and they're very similar. So I don't know, I think I fall into both of them. And then I'm going into medicine. So I think that in medicine, I would be more so of an advocate for my patients. So
talk about the value of that within STEM. That is such excellent work. Talk about why advocacy and being an activist is important and interchangeable.
Yeah, exactly. I'll talk about advocacy in medicine. So as most of us probably know, Black women are more likely to die during childbirth and things like that. And a lot of the time the complaint is that doctors are not listening to them, and they're downplaying their pain and things like that. So as a physician, I think that my role is to advocate for those patients and to listen to and essentially be a voice for the voiceless, right? So when it comes to medicine, I would say that's the connection there. And then again, activism is fighting for injustices that Black people face, because if they don't have access to resources and different things like that, they're more likely to have complications and things like that. So I don't know. As I said, they're both connected, and they're both very valuable.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And we'll go next. Who's next?
Victoria.
Hey, Victoria.
Hi, everyone. This is Victoria speaking. I'm so excited to be here, and I just wanted to say that I think there's a time and place for everyone to be both an advocate and an activist. I think there are spaces where that other voices should be amplified versus my voice being the one amplified, and there are other spaces where, that you can facilitate conversation versus being the one always to speak, and that there's times when you need to listen versus when you need to talk. And so I think that as the person who spoke before me already mentioned, that these terms are interchangeable, and that it's super important to recognize, right now, like, this is my role in this group or in this dialogue or in this space, and being able to name those things and when and where it might be useful.
Excellent. I like when you said, knowing your role and when to navigate that, because oftentimes, if you're not familiar, it's so important in advocacy work or being an ally or, whatever that may be for you, that you understand and that you do your homework. Sometimes we're just like ready to go. Something made us upset. We're marching on Washington. But there's times where it's so important before we even can do advocacy or activism that we must do our homework on the topic, that we must, gain understanding from others. And oftentimes it's being able to be a listening ear to those that are in minority situations, or being in tune to yourself and knowing how you feel when these things happen and understanding how to communicate that effectively when time permits. And we'll go to the next person.
Thank you. You actually, Dr. Williams, you stole my thunder.
I did. I'm sorry, Anik. Say it again. Say it again. Say it how you want to say it.
You actually, you were so on point when you said, I was literally writing it down when you said it about knowing the facts. So
right.
To say, even though I'm not a student, because of my law background, I'm probably both. But in terms of thinking about the difference, usually when you think about advocacy, you think about being within the system.
Right.
Activism is usually seen as being outside of the system and pushing for change. And I think one of the students, I think Nigel said it about the need for both, and a couple of other students, the need for both. But what's really important is understanding that for both, to be honest and to do it really well, it should cost you something. If it doesn't cost you anything, if it doesn't cost your reputation, if it doesn't cost your time, your study and understanding the issues, then I don't really feel like you can say you're an advocate or an activist. So it takes a lot of courage to do it, because you may have to step outside of your comfort zone and say or do things that are challenging to the establishment, that challenge the status quo. But at the end of the day, if you believe in what you're doing and you find allies who are aligned with you, then you can make progress, even if it's incremental progress. So
you said it better. You said it better. That's really good. And that inside the arena is so key, because you want to be able to, for someone to gain respect and understand where you're coming from. I want to know how long you've been in the arena. Now, don't let that discourage you as students, but let it encourage you to continue the education. And that doesn't necessarily mean on areas that you feel comfortable, but on the areas that you don't feel comfortable. When you have a moment reading different articles that may tailor in a different arena than which you work, is going to really expand your understanding of difference and really expand your understanding of how to navigate when things are unjust. So excellent points. Did I miss anybody?
Yes, and I think too, when you look at these movements, most movements of the type that really produce that kind of change are made by students, are made by people. I mean, you look at Dr. King was what, 30? And I mean, even before that, I mean, as you know, a lot of the civil rights, a lot of the things we're experiencing today, even Black Lives Matter, has been charted by young people. And so I definitely agree with you that that you may not have as much experience in a certain way, but right is right and wrong is wrong. If you understand that you see something that needs to be changed, you could figure out a way to do it, and have plenty of people behind you supporting you. So great point.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Was there anybody else I missed before we move on? Because she almost stole my thunder for a couple slides. So I have to keep going before she chimes back in.
There is a message in the chat. Someone
Yes.
said, I believe advocacy is when individuals are willing to believe that there's a community that supports it. I believe that activism is when individuals are willing to spread the word around.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Thank you for sharing that. So becoming an advocate, what does that look like? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Before you become an advocate, there's some internal grappling that happens, right? There's some, unsure, like she said, there's some risk involved. There's some things that you may say, oh, I don't know if I can do this, or there's a fear of what is going to happen if I speak out, or I'm an advocate. And again, I want to be clear in saying advocacy doesn't just mean that you're going out and protesting. That doesn't mean that. It means in your classrooms, if there's some injustice there or there's some inequitable practices. We heard a couple weeks ago when we had the faculty there, where certain students get the short end of the stick, and how are you navigating that? And it's based off of race, right? So creating a growing awareness, walking up, reflecting on your identity and your privilege, knowing that, right? It is so important to understand who you are, especially as you navigate on the collegiate and graduate level. Knowing who you are is going to help you show up better in interviews, show up better in your research, and understanding that. So that internal grappling of understanding really starts with growing awareness. And then that strong feeling, you're going to feel there's certain content areas where you feel frustrated. I know I work with, women in STEM, and that's an area that I'm very passionate about, seeing women move forward in the field of STEM. My supervisor, she just became chair of the biology department, and I wanted to make sure I rallied around her so that she knew that she was supported, that she knew. So I would advocate for her. I would, make sure that she felt comfortable. She could be I would be a listening ear for her when she felt frustrated and wanted to communicate. And being moved to be, by being inspired by that, moved me to be an advocate, right? So those strong feelings about the injustices in the medicine field from one of our speakers, or the injustices based off of race, and when you're showing up in the space of people not wanting to communicate with you or thinking that you're less than, doesn't that frustrate you? It frustrates me. So in those areas that you feel frustrated, how are we navigating that? Now, I'm not telling you to stop all your studies. Don't text or email Deb or say something to Brian saying, you know what, Johniqua has me, Dr. Williams has me wanting to be an advocate or activist in the street. That's not what I'm saying. There are feelings that you have in your classroom. There's feelings that you have in the field of medicine, in the field of computer science, in the field of engineering that make you say, that doesn't seem right. That's not fair. That's not just. And so what are you doing to chase that? And then dialoguing with peers. You're going to see, this program, Allyship is one of those programs that you have to have, right? There's advocacy there. There's that support system. Having courageous conversations and difficult conversations and finding commonalities is the base of what this organization is about. Seeing people of color and helping them navigate in a space where they're not represented. So having those conversations are going to be very important. And then building the advocacy relationship. So building empathy, working within context, encountering barriers, you're going to see that. So even if you do move forward in advocacy, there may be some barriers that come up, and being able to share that experience with peers and others and building that empathy. I went to this professor, I come from the rural area, and he perceives all students from this area to not be as intelligent, or I'm in this class and I don't see any studies that we're doing based on minorities, and sharing those experiences in your space. And then learning to respect, your partner's goals or different areas of understanding. So initial high expectations, awareness and privilege and identification, and then setting aside agendas. So there's certain times where you're learning different things. You don't want to put your agenda forward. You want to listen. You want to understand where people are coming from, and then valuing relationships as you navigate. So if you are going to be an advocate, or activist, building relationship is going to be key, because you have to have people that are with you that are like-minded. Some advocacy is going alone, some activism is going alone, but it's better in groups when you have a common goal. So integrating into advocacy work is, the insight into oppression, understanding systemic racism. So we talked about that first week. So if some of you are like, what does that mean? Go back to that first link that Deb put into the system and understand when we talk about systems of oppression, where there's less representation of minorities in STEM over the period of time. So this social justice work that, that Lewis Stokes did is to counteract that, to mobilize, to get with other people to say, we want other minority students of color in the STEM field, right? And social justice commitment. So even, and the students will talk more about this, I don't want to steal their thunder, but it's so important that as you navigate as a scholar, as you navigate as a faculty, as you navigate as a coordinator, that you're looking back and seeing how you can support others that may not have that voice, that may not feel comfortable, so that they can gain understanding and knowledge and network to be able to be successful. So one thing that and you guys can screenshot this or, look at it later when you go back, but this is one of the, frameworks that I like to show when it talks about, the circle of liberation and understanding that. So this is levels of social change. And you'll see where you start out is getting ready and understanding, then reaching out and seeing, being a listening ear and understanding, that space, from building, communities to creating change to maintaining the change. This is a circle that goes on. And you may find yourself at different points at different times whenever you're available. Sometimes we just have to study, and advocacy is not in our cards right then. But you may say, once I get out and I graduate, I want to give back to a K through 12 school that has, students that are in the inner city learning about STEM. I want to combat. I know one of the initiatives, one of our scholars here is working on this summer is social justice in terms of mathematics. There's such a stigma of, I hate math, I can't do math. And a lot of minority students, they say that so young that there is very little opportunity for them to break that chain of thinking, break that pattern of behavior. So she is going into, this is her summer project, and she's going to work, she's continuing to work on it. She's going into the schools that are doing summer school and providing literacy and providing mathematics training for those students. So that's something that she said, I see that there's not that many people in the classroom that look like me. What can I do about that? And guess what that's doing? That's building morale with the other teachers that are there. She wants to be a math teacher. So guess what? When she graduates and she goes off to graduate school and she needs a job in school, she can come back and get a job. They're going to remember that you came back on your own accord, not trying to seek funding to say, how can I advocate in this space? So think about the circle. You may not find yourself there in every part, but what can you do to do your part? At this time, I'm going to, have our students come forth and talk about their experience and how they've navigated. We'll start with Destiny, and we're just going to introduce yourselves again, and just kind of give their experience as a scholar.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. So again, I am entering my third year as a PhD in pharmacology at Howard University, but I got an undergraduate degree from Alabama State University in the historical city of Montgomery, Alabama. I don't know if you know, but it's known for the Montgomery bus boycott, where Rosa Parks, she refused to give up her seat and she said no. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Forensic Biology from Alabama State University. So I just want to share with you all some personal experiences on how Allies has propelled me into what I'm doing now. So I was accepted into Howard University's doctoral program, along with a very prominent ally, of course, I think you all know, LSAMP, Lois Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. So they have a bridge to doctorate program, which granted me a full scholarship, along with a stipend for my first 2 years of my matriculation. So that's right, I basically am going to school for free, thanks to LSAMP and Howard University, believing in the same vision, the growth of science, specifically including minorities. And it gets better. Because of me being a part of the program, you have obligations to fulfill, such as attending certain conferences. And I met Dr. Williams at one of those conferences, and I'm very grateful to have met her, because now I'm talking to you all. And we also have a common ally because of that conference, which is LSAMP. I also want to highlight a mutual friend. Her name is Johniqua Little Jackson. I might put her Instagram in the chat. Someone had a question. What can we do as students to make sure we focus on ourselves? Okay, I'll get back to that. And where she documents and advocates the importance of STEM women, because currently only 2% of women make up the pool. I also utilize my social media, and I have an ally on there called Main Street One, and they recruit real people with real stories to get the message across. Now, these are paid promotions. So you don't have to be Kylie Jenner, you don't have to have millions of followers to get paid partnerships on Instagram. And this time it's not to promote Fashion Nova or Fashion Nova Men, which is nothing against Fashion Nova. It's just, I was able to advocate something that I'm currently doing. So through that, using my social media, I was able to advocate the importance of unions and the importance of the Pap smear test, because studies are showing that they're trying to get rid of the Pap smear. And as a woman studying in the medicinal field, that is very important, because if you are testing for cancers, it's good to get screening early because you have more treatment options available. So that's enough about me and what I advocate about. But now I want to talk about, let me move this out the way, sorry. Okay, so now I would like to talk about how there's different examples of allied studies in the STEM. So the first one is, I was able to go into nuclear forensics undergraduate summer school in Salt Lake City, Utah, through an ally, which was a board of trustee member, and they had a connection with the Department of Homeland Security. So they were seeking forensics majors because, like I said before, I have an undergraduate degree in forensic biology, and I was able to learn about nuclear reactors and signatures of the components on nuclear weapons that could help and assist in identifying, for example, where a bomb came from or what country is trying to plant an attack, basically. So that's my first example. And my second example is there was a partnership with my undergraduate university, Alabama State, with University of North Texas Health Science Center. And we were able to participate in a study for new drug delivery in cancer using something called reconstituted high density lipoproteins. So basically, cancer cells to thrive, they need cholesterol. So with these reconstituted high density lipoproteins, we're tricking the cancer cells thinking that they're getting cholesterol when really they're getting the drug. So it's a healthier way to target cancer. This study is still ongoing. Right now I'm at Howard, so I'm not doing it anymore. But it's very interesting because this targets the cancer cells and not the healthy cells, because people that get cancer, the treatment option, they also have their healthy cells damaged as well as the cancer cells. And my last example is with Howard University, and they also have funding and allies for minority research. And my chairman at Howard, his name is Dr. Copeland, they're doing studies with Parkinson's disease. And I don't know if you know about Parkinson's, but it's the #2 neurodegenerative disease due to a lack of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter. So people with Parkinson's, they have a lack of dopamine in the basal ganglia. I don't know, it's people that have they shake with their hands a lot. So my chairman found that smokers actually tend to not really have Parkinson's. So they realized that nicotine might be a therapeutic agent for Parkinson's disease. So those are just my 3 examples of ally studies and STEM studies. I didn't want to overwhelm you too much, but I just want to encourage you all to just take heed to the information Dr. Williams is giving you, because your presence is important and allies are very imperative. Thank you.
And why don't you, I'll have you and Shyrisse both answer that question that they put in the chat.
Okay.
It says, what could you do as a student to make sure that you focus on ourselves and make sure we're all doing our part as students, trying to become better every day? So as a student, what can they do, do to focus, on, when they say that ourselves, I'm assuming a minority group, or what can they do for advocacy space? Okay. If I butchered your question, please come off the mic and make sure we clarify it, but go ahead.
Focus on ourselves. I hope they're meaning as a student in a space. I would say the main thing is to be very proactive and to be diligent. When you go to conferences, get yourself out there. Don't just take a card and say, hi, nice to meet you. Get yourself out there, explain what you're doing, show some form of interest in what they're doing and build an actual connection. Because I know a lot of people say it's not what you know, but who you know, but it's really about who knows you. Because just because you got a card from them, they don't know you, so they can't bring you up in a meeting or send you different interviews or internships or think of you like how the board of trustee member Ally thought of me for nuclear forensics, and I was able to be with the nuclear reactor. So I say be very proactive and follow up on people, be interested, ask questions, just make up a question at a conference so you can make your face known and so people can remember you and be like, oh, that's that young lady, or that's that young man that had a question at this conference, or that's that young man, that's that young woman that thought of me in an email or read a paper of this, that, and the third, and just inquired about my research. So that's how I could say you focus on yourself and you prioritize yourself.
Excellent. Shyrisse, we'll have you go now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shyrisse. So I am an LSAMP alumni. I am currently studying at the University of Florida. I'll be starting in the fall. But thanks to LSAM, they were able to help me pave the way to be able to have the opportunity to go to graduate school. And before, I had no idea that that was even an option for me. As a minority student, it was really difficult. I was constantly worried about money, but I did get scholarships, and LSAM did provide me a stipend as well to help me with those costs and applying to graduate school. But I think as students, we should also help other minority students. So that's kind of another answer to your question of what we can do as students, is to help other students and to kind of pass it along. So when I was a senior, I would talk to underclassmen or even juniors about LSAMP. I would talk to them about grad school, my process, what I was going through, because I don't think it's good to keep everything to yourself when you can help someone else, especially minority students. We already have a tough time as it is, so we might as well form a bond together, help each other out, lift each other up. And so that was kind of my motto. And that's what I keep trying to do as I meet people, underclassmen. I try to talk to them about different scholarships, different programs, because I think that's really important to do. There's a lot of people out there who are just for themselves. And I think that's the wrong thinking, the wrong mentality. And that's the whole purpose of ally activism, advocate, is to help other people and to lift other people up. So as far as research studies, there is a female chemist who is a minority. She's Puerto Rican. She works for L'Oreal, and she's a part of an ambassador program. So what she does is she was in a minority program in her undergraduate that helped her get to where she is today. She has her PhD in chemistry, and she works for L'Oreal. She's had over about 40 patents. She's responsible for creating the Superstay lipstick L'Oreal line. But she's a good example to underclassmen, to different minority students, females in STEM. That's her advocacy. She works to help bring these students up, show them their paths, what they can do. I think that's a really important job that she has. I don't know if you guys have heard, but there was Dr. Marion Hood. Recently, Emory has apologized to him because back in the 50s, he applied, and due to racism, he was rejected. But he continued on. He didn't let that stop him. And he kept applying, and he did become an OBGYN doctor. So I think that's a great story to remember, is that no matter what you face, you keep pushing forward and you do what you have to do to accomplish your dreams, no matter what someone does to you. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I know we only have a few more minutes here, and then we want to make sure that we take questions. But one thing that I wanted to point forward, just, sometimes when we hear activism and we think of it in this way, how can I do anything as a student? How can I be an ally as a student? But it is possible. There are ways for you to navigate. And I wanted to provide some examples here. So in 1951, the student strike laid the groundwork for the Brown versus Board of Education, creating, equal space for minorities to attend school. When you look at student activism shaped Black Lives Matter, you saw a lot of protests that took place in that format. Where students, did a movement in Chicago, where, Wisconsin students marched over 50 miles, for gun reform. These are different areas, different examples of what you see in activism. But I wanted the young ladies to talk about it in the field of STEM, because that's our focus. Our focus is in the field of STEM. But if there is to answer one of the students' questions, if there is an area of your interest, making sure that you chase that you learn about it, that you talk to others about it as well. What can you do? Again, paying attention, educating yourself, acknowledging the oppressions and privileges of others, and making sure that when you understand the different privileges or lack thereof, that you're mindful of other people's space and time and willingness to communicate about it. The little things that you can do is in terms of making noise and talking with other people, but looking up other national organizations. What are they doing to fight, the aspect of there's not a lot of women represented in STEM, or, there's minority women that are not healthy in certain arenas, and they're continuing to see discrimination in different formats. These are the little things that you can do to promote along the way. And then just trying to, once you understand that, again, seeking that education. one of my favorite quotes from the activist and author James Baldwin: not everything that is faced can be changed, right? But nothing can be changed until it's faced. So there's certain things in this aspect where, you know, you may not understand it all in terms of activism, of racism, but you know that you feel certain things in the arena. You know that there's times where you can't put your finger on it, but you feel discriminated against, or you see that there's no representation of you within this space. How are you navigating that? If there's a concern or care in the field where you're seeing, you know, someone being mistreated, or women being discriminated against, or sicknesses impacting minorities, or one of our students here did a garden for what they call landlocked areas where there's not many grocery stores around. So they created a garden in that area because they felt the need for that. They connected with some other people that developed gardens, and they were able to navigate that space. So I say to you, you know, this is your time. When you're in LSAMP and you have partners and connectors with you, you have advocates that are in partnership in terms of your education, in terms of your understanding of who you are, you have that opportunity. So I want to open the floor. You know, I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want to open the floor to see if anyone had any questions or just wanted to make, you know, their voice heard in this space. And Shyrisse or Destiny, if you wanted to follow up, and you can pull your cameras on, if you wanted to follow up with any closing thoughts, just to encourage the students to look at activism in a broader way.
Right, I'll be simple. Go to the airport, wear your paraphernalia. You never know who could contact you or who might have questions, and then just sell yourself. Practice your elevator speech. You got it. It can be something small.
Excellent. Any questions? Well, Brian, we might have done it earlier than before. Oh, I see one hand. Okay.
Got a hand raised.
Yeah, Anik has their hand raised.
Yes, Anik.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with the students out here. Obviously, Dr. Williams, myself, we're all program leaders in the different LSAMP communities in which we serve, and as such, you know, please use us as a resource too. We are allies for you. We are advocates for you as well. And so sometimes there's kind of low-hanging fruit. If you're facing a difficulty or having a challenge, it's our job to help you to try to navigate that, to find resources or offices on campus that can support you. So please talk to your LSAMP director or your Bridge to the Doctorate program director for help and guidance, and know that there are resources out there for you, and we're here to support you.
Excellent point.
So someone said, what happens if our school we choose is not part of the program when we transfer at 4 years? So are you talking about graduate school?
Or is it LSAMP? Okay, LSAMP. So if there's not an LSAMP, I'm not sure. I don't know if Deb or Brian want to chime in, but you know, it just depends on. Are you wanting to do advocacy work, or are you wanting to just be a part of a program like LSAMP? And I'm sure you're typing, but I will definitely say, you know, LSAMP, you know, you may be able to attend. I know there's a couple of students that we have a local college that is not a part of the LSAMP. And I know our meetings, some of our meetings are open to the campus where we do educational forums or have panels, and we open that across, you know, the different genres of, or different aspects of campus. So I don't necessarily, there's some programs that are just for my scholars, but then there's some programs that I leave open to other STEM majors to be able to take part. And when I do that, that goes out on a public forum. So you might look at other institutions that are close to you and see if they have some programming, and reach out to the coordinator, because our goal is not to say, oh, I just want to help these students here. I want to make sure that we want to make sure that you grow. And if you're a minority student in STEM, or even a student in general, because our heart is for students, but make sure that you're looking at different institutions that are around, because they have support there. And I never turn other students away that are not just associated with our alliance. I've met, like you see here, Destiny, and then one of her good friends are also connected to me, and I keep up with, I encourage, I text during exam time. I need to do it more with Destiny, but now I got her cell phone number, but I'm gonna follow up and say, hey, how's it going? I just talked to Shyrisse yesterday, and I told her, you can do it. And I'm saying it again to her on camera. You got this, and Destiny, you all connect, because you all need each other in this process. But that's what it's about. We're here to advocate for you and to network. So please, make sure that if we could be a resource to the student that mentioned that, feel free. I'll put my email in the chat as well.
May I also add something?
Yes.
So my school, UF, doesn't have a LSAMP program necessarily. They do have like an LSAMP Florida Georgia Alliance for undergrads, but not for grads. There is a diversity office, though, that offers fellowships for grad students. So that's something to look into, is what other programs they have related to the diversity office. So see, every school, I'm pretty sure, has a diversity office. So go to them, email them, call them, see what they have available for you.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And, again, I want to thank each of you for being brave to attend these sessions. These are not the fluff fun, get your resume pumped up, how to get a job, how to get, that 6-figure salary. These are heartfelt sessions, right? These are the sessions that are going to be able to allow you to understand who you are and navigate in the space that you're in. So if this was your first one, I definitely recommend that you go back to those other two to gain that information, because this is something that we're going to continue to face. Advocacy work is not new. Understanding who you are as a minority in STEM is not new, but it's comforting to know that somebody else is there supporting you along the way, so that you know that you're not alone, and that you can communicate to myself or any other coordinators or other students there to help build your journey to success. So thank you all so much for this journey, for these past 3 sessions. Thank you to Shyrisse and Destiny for being with us tonight, because they took time out of their studies and away from their summertime to be with us. So I just appreciate the whole experience. And thanks again to Deb and Brian and Anique for just being present. And most all of you been here each time. So I thank you so much. And Brian, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much. You guys did a wonderful job once again, and I'm just really pleased of how you are combining both your expertise, but also the expertise of our students and others. I mean, this series, this is part 3 of the series, but I would say we've had at least 10 people involved in the dialogue. And everybody has brought a wonderful perspective. I thank you, guests today, for your vulnerability and for your honesty and for your braveness to speak. Thank you for the students who've attended, who've spoke up, who shared their voice, because you are being bold. And this is a sensitive topic, but I think that everybody has handled this professionally and wonderfully. I do think that you guys can give Deb feedback in the surveys. There probably are more conversations to be had, but I do think that our first kind of stab at having these dialogues has gone wonderful. So please provide that feedback to Deb. I do know that we'll be starting to prep for our big conference later in the year. So definitely give us that feedback, as we definitely want you guys to have confidence in this space. And that confidence comes from good information. But don't forget that after we get this information, we have to put it into application. All right, so we'll be back again next Wednesday. I challenge you every week to invite a friend, and I thank you so much for sacrificing your time with us, and we'll see you next week. Take care.